Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. I'm sorry for not uploading for a longer time than usual, but I was sick and I just didn't have a chance. But anyways, today we're gonna talk about the minority attack from the black's point of view. So that's from a perspective of a player who gets attacked by the minority, lol. Anyways, I got this comment asking about doing a video on this topic, so I decided to do it. The minority attack is actually a very powerful positional plan, which could be very annoying and it could cause a lot of problems. Well, as you probably know, if one does the minority attack, let's just say black does something, he plays out his minority attack b5 in order to just create a backward pawn or an isolated pawn, just a weakness to attack with his pieces. But what is the best option for black to choose from? Of course he can take the pawn here, but what is the problem? White is of course going to recapture this pawn with probably a rook or a knight or whatever, and you're gonna have an isolated pawn here, and white is going to have two open files to use. Especially this b file here, he could attack your b7 pawn also, and his pawn structure is a pretty good one, so you really don't want to take on b5. Now another option is to just push to this c5 square, which is also not that great because, you know, he's going to take your pawn, and okay, you're going to recapture it with a rook probably, but now you have an isolated pawn on an open file, which of course means that your opponent is going to attack your pawn, and that's going to be pretty hard to defend. So this option is also not that good for black. The best option for black is, I think, to just leave this pawn here on b5. But before we continue with my recommendation here, let us just figure out the plan in this structure for black. Well, as you can see, white's pawns point towards this side of the board and black's pawns face in this direction here. Which, as you know, or if you don't know, I've also made a video on this so you can check it out. Well, basically this means that black wants to attack here on the king side and white wants to attack on the queen side, which is logical because he wants to do his minority attack stuff. So this gives us an important information that we want to make action here on the king side. So our plan against this minority attack is to find some active play on the king side in order to slow down our opponent here with his minority attack ideas and just shut him down. Now he's most probably going to use his open c file, and we're going to use our open e file. That's our advantage here. And also our knight can jump to this square, it's a pretty nice square, and because a lot of pieces are going to face into this direction here on the king side, we want to bring them here. We want to bring our queen to the action, also our rooks probably, and just attack black's king. So this means that even though the minority attack seems very scary, you can find your own active play here on your side, on the side where you are supposed to be playing. But let's continue here with my recommendation on what to do against the minority attack. Well, if he starts his minority attack with the move b4, then the thing that I would actually recommend is playing a6. Now the reason is actually not to stop this move b5 here, because white can just easily push a4 and protect this b5 square one more time. But the point is that when white plays b5, we take it with our a pawn. Now if we do, for example, one move here, if white plays b5, we take it with our a pawn. And the point is that white is going to recapture, and he still has his minority attack here going, but we just opened the A file. Now white is probably going to have his rooks here on the C file or on the B file, you know, protecting this pawn, or just attacking here on the C file, and our rook is going to be on the A file. So it's logical to open this A file, maybe for further penetrations on this file, It's just helpful to have a rook on the open file. We're seeking for some counterplay here on the queen side, and meanwhile we're also of course going to, you know, put pressure on his king side, have also our own counterplay, and play a playable game. Now he's most often just going to take your pawn on the next move. For example, you play something, he's most probably going to take your pawn and you're going to recapture. And as you can see, your c6 pawn is a pretty weak pawn. It's a backwards pawn, which means that it's hardly going to move, but your main plan here is actually going to be to move the pawn. Now of course this would create you another isolated pawn here, but this would not be such a problem as this pawn here on c6 is, because believe me, white is going to put a lot of pressure on this pawn, and you're just going to have to defend it with all of your pieces. Your pieces are going to be passive, and your position is probably going to collapse. So your best hope is to play c5 and have the isolated pawn, which is going to be okay, and you could even push this pawn further to exchange it for this pawn or whatever. It's better than having this weak c6 pawn. So as you can see, you can't really avoid the minority attack. You basically have these three ways of dealing with it, but in all of them you're going to get some weaknesses. But your mission of course is to choose the best one. So that's why I'm recommending to you the plan with a6, to open your a file, get some counterplay here, and meanwhile do your stuff on the king side. Now I want to show you a game quickly on how black used these main ideas fighting against the minority attack. So okay, the opening here is really not that important. We can see that here we got our structure. As you can see, that's Carlsbad pawn structure. I've also made a video on this, you can check it out. But for now, let's continue with our game. Okay, they exchanged some pieces and castled. And now it's the moment for us to look at this game. Now, white immediately played b4, just going for this minority attack, which is logical because in these positions, in these structures, that's the thing to play for, and it's a very reasonable thing to do. Now here, what black did, black actually exchanged two pairs of minor pieces in a way that favors him. Let's see what he did. He put his knight to his main square for it on e4, also attacking the bishop, so he moved to f4, and now he just exchanged the knights. He exchanged the knight, which could potentially, support this b5 minority attack push, or also come to this c5 square. Could be a bit annoying, so that's why he took it off, and white recaptured. And now another exchange, bishop to d6. Now what black wants to do here is to actually put his knight on this d6 square, from where it's going to be a very good knight. So white captures the bishop, and now we can see the move, of course, knight to b5, attacking the queen and the bishop. When the queen moves, we just recapture the bishop, and as we can see, we're supporting this b5 square, preventing some upcoming, minority attacks. We can also hop into one of these squares here, and our knight is just beautifully placed. So we can see a4 now, which is typical for, supporting this b5 push, because one move earlier this wasn't possible, so that's why he played a4. And now which move can we see? a6. Now a6 is even more powerful because we're actually stopping the move b5. We're not just opening the a file, we're actually stopping it, because we also have our knight here protecting this b5 square. So now white just moved his knight to the e5 square, probably heading somewhere here. But okay, what did black play? Black played rook to e8, the file where his rook belongs to. This is our open file. This is where we want to do stuff. What did white do? He played his rook to the e1 square. And now, like we were talking about, queen to g5. bringing our pieces to the king side because that's where we want to play. That's the direction our pawns are looking at, and that's where we seek for active play. So now white just played h3, and okay, improvement of the king on this g7 square. Now queen to c2 and rook to e6, doubling on the e file as you can see now, bringing the pieces to the king side. Okay, white plays a move. Queen to h5, okay, queen to b3, and now f6. Saying goodbye to this knight on e5, which was kinda in a way for our rooks. So he moves, and now g5, taking action on the king side, trying to cause white some problems here on the king side. So now white plays queen to d1, trying to exchange queens, but black says no and plays his queen to g6. Now we can see queen to c2 and rook back to e7. Now okay, white moves his rook to d1 and h5, pushing the pawns. It's not dangerous for black or anything, it's a nice move. So now we can see queen to b1. The thing is that white can't actually, play this minority attack here because black successfully stopped it. a6 was a pretty good move here. Okay, so now black just played h4, queen back to c2, white is doing nothing, g4, breakthrough here. But okay, this allows white to jump on the f4 square and attack our queen, and this actually makes us to exchange the queens. Now we can see g3, rook to d3, king to h6, king to f1, king to g5, trying to improve the kings, knight back to e2, and knight to c4. We can see that our knight here is a really useful piece, and like we said, it can jump wherever he wants, also protects this square, everything. So yeah, it's a nice piece. Now, what does white do? He played rook to c3, probably missing this trick, knight to b2, and attacking the rook, he has to move it and we take the pawn. Now black won at the end of the game. It's not looking so well for white, and the reason is that we stopped the minority attack and we made some counterplay where we have to play, and we just made our knight active on this d6 square. It's a really good knight. So this is one of the example games of a really good game played against the minority attack. And if you want to see any other games also won by players playing against the minority attack, please tell me this in the comments, and also please give me some feedback. If you enjoyed the game, what would you recommend for the future videos? Any ideas would be welcome. Thank you guys for watching, and until the next time, be well.